Queen Camilla never expected this. A silent reshuffling behind palace doors, and a role once hers, now handed to Duchess Sophie. The emotional moment struck hard when Camilla learned of King Charles's secret proposal. Not from him, but from aides. Tears at Clarence House, whispers in the corridors, and one poised woman stepping into the light. This isn't a scandal. It's a quiet royal power shift, and for Camilla, it may be the beginning of her final retreat. The moment that broke the silence. It began not with a royal decree, but with a quiet shockwave inside Clarence House. Queen Camilla, long seen as the steady, if controversial, partner to King Charles, was left blindsided when news reached her of a private royal reshuffle. According to palace insiders, Camilla discovered Charles had made a significant, emotionally charged proposal, not to her, but to Duchess Sophie of Edinburgh. The offer? A newly redefined senior role, steeped in symbolism and substance, originally envisioned for someone else entirely. What stung most wasn't the offer itself, but how she found out. Sources close to the Queen consort say she wasn't informed directly by Charles, but instead heard whispers through palace aides during a routine planning meeting in September 2025. The revelation came like a slap, not just as a professional slight, but as a personal betrayal. Camilla, who had weathered decades of public scrutiny to stand beside Charles, suddenly found herself on the outside of a royal conversation that redefined the inner circle. Later that evening, Camilla was reportedly seen in tears during a private moment in her sitting room at Clarence House, surrounded only by her closest staff. One aide, speaking under condition of anonymity, described her as visibly shaken, silent, and withdrawn. After years of clawing back public favor post-Diana, after enduring whispers and criticism, the idea that Sophie, once seen as a quiet background figure, might be stepping into a role of symbolic influence left Camilla reeling. For Camilla, this wasn't just a procedural shift. It was personal. Her reign as queen consort had already faced public hesitation and quiet tension within the palace. Now, the optics of being quietly sidelined in favor of a more universally liked royal woman signaled something deeper. A new chapter was being written in real time, one where Camilla might still wear the crown, but not the confidence of the monarch she stood beside. While Camilla processed the emotional fallout, the true magnitude of the shift unfolded behind closed doors at Buckingham Palace. King Charles, aware of the monarchy's fragile image post-Megxit and scandal, had begun crafting a contingency plan, one that would anchor the institution in quiet strength. He didn't seek noise or popularity, he sought stability, and he believed Sophie could deliver it. This wasn't about replacing a queen, it was about resetting the monarchy's public face. And it all began with a secret conversation. King Charles's secret plan. Inside the paneled walls of Buckingham Palace, in the wake of rising political tension and diminishing public trust, King Charles III convened with his most trusted advisors. It was early August 2025, and the monarch, already navigating his own health battles, knew that the crown's future needed more than tradition. It needed resilience. Out of this concern came a quietly revolutionary idea, entrusting Duchess Sophie with a role that would refocus the public's view of royal duty. Charles was strategic. The plan was never announced formally, never written down. It existed only in private conversations with a circle that included Prince Edward, Princess Anne, and a select few senior aides. The intention was not to humiliate Camilla or echo past controversies. Rather, Charles was reimagining the monarchy's female face, one that could carry the gravitas of Queen Elizabeth II without the divisiveness of celebrity. Sophie, with her decades of quiet service, embodied that vision. The shift was about direction, not drama. Charles had seen what happened with Meghan's meteoric rise and exit. He knew Camilla's ongoing rehabilitation had a ceiling, especially with younger generations. What he needed was someone who didn't have to become royal in the public eye, because she already was. Sophie's consistent work with over 70 charities, her diplomacy abroad, and her unshakable discretion made her not just an option, but the solution. By crafting this new direction around Sophie, Charles wasn't simply moving pieces on the board. He was protecting the institution itself. In the midst of fractured headlines, waning trust, and the weight of the crown post-Elizabeth II, Charles wasn't looking for a new queen. He was looking for a new cornerstone. Sophie became the one figure who could step into a higher role without shaking the monarchy's already fragile foundations. When Charles presented the proposal to Sophie in a private meeting at Windsor, her response wasn't flashy. It was composed. There were no grand statements, no press events, no palace leaks. But when asked about the shift by a reporter days later, Sophie delivered a reply that would become iconic. In just 10 words, she not only accepted the role, but rewrote her place in royal history. It was quiet, it was poised, and it hit like thunder. Sophie's silent triumph. It was during a low-profile visit to a youth engagement forum in Manchester, just days after her private meeting with King Charles, that Duchess Sophie was approached by a royal correspondent. The question was loaded. Are you prepared to step into Meghan's former role in the public eye? Her reply was simple, clear, and instantly unforgettable. What did people think we were doing before? In that moment, Sophie delivered a royal mic drop, one that reverberated far beyond the hall she stood in. That line, though delivered softly, instantly trended on social media and appeared in every major British tabloid by the next morning. The Telegraph called it a masterclass in royal confidence. BBC royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell labeled it a turning point in public perception. Sophie had just made it clear. She wasn't stepping into someone else's shadow. She had always been there, doing the work while others chased headlines. Her comment wasn't born of ego. It was forged through years of unseen effort. Since marrying Prince Edward in 1999, Sophie had built a reputation for hands-on work. She visited hospitals, supported rape crisis centers, worked with disability advocacy groups, and led global humanitarian trips, without press briefings or designer photo ops. Her rise wasn't orchestrated. It was earned. And now, the world was finally taking notice. Charles reportedly smiled when he heard Sophie's response. Privately, he described her as steady under fire, a trait he admired most in his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. That single sentence had done what no royal announcement could. It clarified the shift. Sophie wasn't a replacement. She was the restoration of values long thought lost in the noise of modern monarchy. And with that quiet confidence, she didn't just accept a role, she redefined it. Camilla's private struggles. Resurface. While Duchess Sophie quietly stepped into her new role with poise, a different scene unfolded behind the heavy curtains of Clarence House. Queen Camilla, already reeling from not being informed directly by King Charles, began to feel the emotional weight of what insiders are calling a silent dethroning. Her outward composure remained intact during public appearances, but within palace walls, staff reported a shift. Withdrawal, tension, and long silences where once there was confidence. Camilla's internal fears, rooted in decades of public resistance, resurfaced. She had fought long and hard for her place beside Charles, enduring fierce media scrutiny after Princess Diana's tragic death in 1997 and struggling for years to shed the label of royal homewrecker. Her coronation as Queen Consort in 2023 was seen as the ultimate symbol of acceptance. But now, just 2 years later, that hard-won crown felt increasingly symbolic and alarmingly fragile. Reports from insiders at St. James's Palace claim Camilla's relationship with Charles has grown tense in recent months, particularly since his proposal to Sophie in September 2025. She feels blindsided, one senior aide shared, not just by the decision, but by the way it was kept from her. It reignited old wounds. Emotional distance between the royal couple has widened, with Camilla allegedly skipping 2 key planning sessions for Remembrance Day engagements, a break from her usual consistency. While Charles continues to defend his decision as a strategic one for the monarchy's future, Camilla is left facing an uncomfortable question. What is her place now? No one has taken her title. No announcement has been made. Yet, everyone inside the palace knows what's happening. The Queen Consort is still standing, but her shadow grows longer with every silent nod to Sophie's rising presence. But for many inside Buckingham Palace, this wasn't just about Camilla's present. It was about a legacy long in the making. Before Charles, before public approval ratings and royal social media teams, there was one monarch whose quiet judgments shaped everything: Queen Elizabeth II. And those close to her say she saw something in Sophie years ago that few others noticed. While Camilla worked for acceptance, Sophie earned something rarer from the Queen: unshakable trust. The Queen's favor. Long before the current royal reshuffling, Queen Elizabeth II had quietly built an emotional alliance with Sophie Rhys-Jones. The two women, both understated, both duty-driven, found common ground in their love of tradition and disdain for spectacle. Over the course of 20 years, Sophie became one of the Queen's most consistent companions, often accompanying her to private retreats at Balmoral, where they would spend hours in quiet reflection, long countryside walks, and undisturbed meals. One former royal footman, who served from 2005 to 2020, recalled that the Queen often referred to Sophie as "my second daughter." The bond went far beyond formality. While Kate Middleton was admired and Camilla respected for her loyalty to Charles, it was Sophie who the Queen chose to sit beside her at smaller gatherings, especially during the isolation of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 to 2021. The Queen trusted Sophie, not just as family, but as a sounding board. During Queen Elizabeth's final months in 2022, Sophie was often at her side. In fact, Sophie and Prince Edward were among the first royals to arrive at Balmoral Castle when the Queen's health rapidly declined that September. The proximity was no accident. According to palace insiders, Her Majesty had long viewed Sophie as a model of how royal women should carry themselves: dignified, discreet, and dependable. The Queen is said to have once confided, "Sophie never asks for a role. She simply fulfills it." It's this very distinction that makes Camilla's current struggle more painful. While she had to navigate public doubt and PR campaigns for decades, Sophie received the Queen's quiet endorsement simply by being herself. No controversy, no reinvention, no need for rehabilitation. In a monarchy where lineage often dictates favor, Sophie's standing was earned, not inherited. And now, King Charles, perhaps unconsciously, is following his mother's instincts by placing Sophie at the heart of a modernized monarchy. And as fate would have it, the very position Sophie now holds, the public-facing, humanitarian-minded role, was once meant for someone else entirely. When Meghan Markle entered the royal scene in 2018, the monarchy hoped she would be that bridge between worlds, modern and traditional, royal and relatable. But after her exit in 2020, the crown was left scrambling. Now, with Sophie in place, it's clear the royal family didn't just recover from that void, they quietly filled it with someone who never asked for attention. A role once meant for Meghan now belongs to Sophie. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped back from royal duties in January 2020, it was more than a family rift. It was a communications crisis. The monarchy lost its most media-savvy couple, its youngest public face, and its most prominent mixed-race voice. The vacuum left in Meghan's departure was sharp and visible. For a time, no one could imagine who could step in, until Duchess Sophie, without fanfare, began embodying that role through action, not headlines. The comparison isn't about glamour or race. It's about function. Meghan had been tasked with revitalizing the Crown's connection to global and diverse communities. But in her absence, it was Sophie who traveled to South Sudan, Malawi, and Colombia for human rights work. In 2021 alone, she undertook more than 230 engagements, many of them focused on disability rights, education for girls, and conflict resolution. Her visits received minimal media coverage, but deep respect from foreign dignitaries and local advocates. More importantly, Sophie did it without creating a public spectacle. Where Meghan's interviews made headlines, Sophie's efforts made impact. Her choice to quietly attend UN Women conferences, meet with rape crisis survivors, and advocate for eye care accessibility never needed a Netflix special. Instead, she let the work speak. And it did, especially to King Charles, who saw in Sophie the realization of what the monarchy had hoped Meghan would become: an effective, committed, modern female royal. Queen Camilla reportedly sees this too, and it unnerves her. Some palace aides say Camilla fears Meghan's exit gave Sophie a direct path to power, a royal road she walked with humility, not haste. Sophie didn't compete for the role. She simply continued her work, uninterrupted. And now, with Charles's endorsement and the Queen's legacy behind her, Sophie isn't filling Meghan's shoes. She's showing the Crown what those shoes should have looked like all along. The public's unexpected favorite. By October 2025, a shift in public sentiment had become undeniable. While Queen Camilla maintained her formal role beside King Charles, it was Duchess Sophie whose name began appearing in op-eds, social media threads, and glowing headlines across Britain. Not since Kate Middleton's rise had a royal woman captured the public's admiration so swiftly and so unexpectedly. Yet, unlike Kate, Sophie's ascension wasn't tied to fashion or fanfare. It was built on legacy, consistency, and credibility. After Sophie's now iconic quote, "What did people think we were doing before?" became a viral soundbite. Public interest in her decades-long service surged. Publications like The Times and The Guardian began publishing retrospectives on her uncelebrated work. Headlines included, "The Royal Workhorse We Ignored," and "Sophie, the Crown's Quiet Gem." Polls conducted by YouGov in late October 2025 showed a 23% spike in Sophie's favorability among 18 to 34-year-olds, a demographic historically disenchanted with the monarchy. Meanwhile, Camilla's approval ratings, which had already plateaued following the Queen's death in 2022, saw a 12% decline. Analysts attributed this not to scandal or error, but to optical fatigue. The public had simply never connected with her in the same way they had with Diana, Kate, or now Sophie. As one royal commentator put it bluntly during a BBC interview, Camilla has always worn the crown. But Sophie now wears the people's trust. That trust extended beyond image. Sophie's work with over 70 active charities, her 20-plus years of uninterrupted royal duties, and her avoidance of palace drama became symbols of what many Britons now crave in royal representation: quiet competence. With each passing week, Sophie's profile grew, not as a celebrity royal, but as a figure of emotional steadiness. And the more she rose, the more Camilla seemed to quietly step back into the shadows. But this wasn't just a public shift. It was becoming a private one, too. Inside Buckingham Palace, protocols were changing. Royal aides who once deferred to Camilla for key briefings now began including Sophie in planning sessions. Charles, whose focus had turned toward legacy amid increasing health rumors, was leaning heavily on Sophie for guidance. Behind the polished windows and centuries-old tapestries, an unspoken power shift was underway. One that didn't require a crown to signal who held the palace's center of gravity. The Battle of Two Duchesses. By November 2025, the subtle dynamics between Duchess Sophie and Queen Camilla had evolved into something far more pointed. While Camilla retained the ceremonial gravitas of her title, it was Sophie who was now regularly present in key advisory meetings, royal briefings, and long-term planning sessions, roles traditionally reserved for the queen consort. To the public, both women maintained cordial appearances, but within the palace, aides began whispering of a quiet rivalry, one not of ambition, but of influence. Camilla's power had always been tied to proximity. Proximity to Prince Charles during their controversial romance, proximity to Queen Elizabeth II through slow acceptance, and proximity to official duties following Charles's coronation in May 2023. But Sophie's influence came from another place entirely: earned credibility, forged over 2 decades of near-flawless service. And now, with Charles himself consulting her regularly, that earned status was becoming institutionalized. One insider from the royal household described the shift bluntly: when senior staff need answers, they go to Sophie. Not because she demands it, but because she always has them. Even Prince William and Catherine have reportedly started seeking Sophie's input on major engagements, particularly regarding youth outreach and humanitarian causes. This change was not declared, but unmistakably real. Aides even noted that for the first time in years, Sophie received the first copy of the palace's annual winter briefing, previously reserved for Camilla. Camilla, sources say, has taken the shift hard. Once a central figure in every conversation, she now finds herself politely excluded from inner discussions or updated after decisions are made. Though she remains visible at public events, the tone has changed. Her speeches feel less empowered. Her presence less decisive. The symbolic battle between two duchesses, one of title, the other of trust, has tilted. And it's Sophie's calm, consistent force that is now anchoring the monarchy's private engine. For Charles, this subtle rearrangement wasn't driven by favoritism, it was necessity. With mounting health issues and the growing complexity of modern monarchy, he needed a steady hand to reinforce the values Queen Elizabeth II once upheld. Camilla had fulfilled her role, but it was time for evolution. And by elevating Sophie, Charles was sending a message to the monarchy and the world. The next era wouldn't be defined by drama or damage control. It would be built on dignity. Charles's message to the monarchy. King Charles, once mocked for his modernism and complicated personal life, is now executing what many royal watchers call his most strategic legacy move. The gradual elevation of Duchess Sophie, done without public announcement yet unmistakably deliberate, signals the monarch's desire to preserve the royal institution by reshaping its face. And that face, to his mind, must reflect service, not survival. The pivot from Camilla to Sophie is less about rejection and more about resilience. Behind closed doors, Charles has become increasingly vocal about his long-term vision. Palace insiders confirm that in a private strategy meeting held in late November 2025, he emphasized the need to return the monarchy to unquestioned duty, a term he used to describe his late mother's reign. In that meeting, he referenced Sophie's work in South Sudan, her handling of sensitive diplomatic trips, and her ability to maintain respect without seeking headlines. "She's what we need right now," he said firmly. For Camilla, the shift is both strategic and emotional. She had finally earned her place after decades of controversy, and yet she now faces the cold truth. Her influence is no longer rising. It's retreating. Friends close to her say she understands the necessity of Charles's decision, but that doesn't lessen the sting. She has reportedly begun scaling back engagements and focusing more on private family time, perhaps sensing that her chapter in royal history may be closing. Not officially, but spiritually. As the monarchy navigates growing calls for reform, public scrutiny, and global relevance, Charles knows he cannot afford another scandal or fracture. His bet on Sophie is more than safe. It's stabilizing. By surrounding himself with steady, dutiful figures like Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and now Sophie, Charles is building a palace not of perfection, but of purpose. And in doing so, he's making it clear: legacy will not be dictated by loudness. It will be guarded by quiet strength. Still, no decision, no matter how strategic, comes without cost. And the emotional toll is becoming clear inside Clarence House. As whispers of Sophie's rise echo louder across royal corridors, Camilla's silence is telling. In a monarchy ruled by appearances, absence often speaks louder than presence. And in recent days, insiders say the Queen Consort has withdrawn from even the smallest duties. In the final act of this quiet royal coup, her tears may be the last sound we hear. Camilla's tears. There are few photographs of Queen Camilla alone, but in December 2025, a grainy image taken from outside Clarence House captured her seated by a window, tissue in hand, head bowed. It wasn't a scandal, it wasn't a meltdown, but it was a moment and a message. For all the crowns, titles, and ceremonial power, Camilla had come face to face with something no one in the royal family wants to acknowledge: the quiet inevitability of being replaced. Insiders say that over the last 6 weeks, Camilla has become increasingly withdrawn. Her public schedule has shrunk. Her presence at planning sessions has all but disappeared. At a charity dinner she co-hosted in early December, she was seen leaving early, avoiding press, and visibly emotional. "She's not angry," one palace aide remarked. "She's just fading." The shift hasn't been cruel or deliberate. It's been natural, and that, perhaps, is what hurts most. Sophie, for her part, has not sought the spotlight. She continues her work as always, steady, sincere, and silent. But it's precisely this approach that makes her so powerful in comparison. Without fanfare or friction, she has become the embodiment of the monarchy's next phase. And in contrast, Camilla's presence now feels tied to the past, one shaped by controversy, public skepticism, and uphill battles for acceptance. The real question now is one of legacy. Titles can be retained, Roles can be redefined. But influence, that's earned, not bestowed. As King Charles's reign matures and public eyes turn toward William, Kate, and Sophie, Camilla faces her most difficult chapter yet. Not exile, not disgrace, but slow irrelevance. And in the silent corridors of the palace, that may be the most heartbreaking ending of all. No headlines announced it. No speeches declared it. Yet the palace feels different now, with Sophie at the center and Camilla slowly fading from view. King Charles's unspoken message is clear. Legacy demands more than survival. It demands service without spectacle. Camilla remains queen in title, but the people, the palace, and even history may already be leaning towards Sophie. In the monarchy's quietest coup yet, tears, not trumpets, marked the end of one reign and the rise of another.